Shalom from a little coffee and a lot of Yahuah. My name is Jacob, and we are going to be talking today about 3 topics. These topics are related, although if you name the topics, the relation between them is not very clear. And we're going to study Abba's word and see what the link is and how Abba will lead us to his answers and his truth that he wants us to know. Just the little coffee. And now we can get stuck into a lot of Yahuah. I'm going to start off talking about being born of corruptible seed or incorruptible seed. And thereafter we're going to talk about the understanding of grace. And then lastly we're going to look at the unforgivable sin. I'm not sure how long this is going to take, but we will see. It might take 2 sessions, maybe 3, but that is not important. It's important that we get to study Abba's word and to listen to what he wants us to know. So, we start off with 1 Peter 1 verse 3. Blessed be the Elohim and Father of our Master Yahusha Messiah, who, according to his great compassion, has caused us to be born again, to a living expectation through the resurrection of Yahusha Messiah from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible and undefiled and unfading, having been kept in the heavens for you, who are protected by the power of Elohim through belief, for a deliverance ready to be revealed in the last time. So there are some key words here. Abba has caused us to be born again, to an inheritance which is incorruptible and undefiled and unfading, who is protected by the power of Elohim through belief, for a deliverance. So it is telling us here that we must be born again. Abba will cause us to be born again, and this happens by him calling us. If we are called and we are his chosen and we respond, you will have those who are called or chosen but does not respond to Abba's call. And then this inheritance is incorruptible, is undefiled and unfading. These are really important words because that is what Abba is. He is undefiled, he is incorruptible, and he is unfading. And that's where we're going to be with him one day. Now Abba works in many people's lives. He works in lives of the believer, but he will also work in the life of the unbeliever. And it might not make sense to you at this point, but Abba will use the unbeliever for the esteem and the glory of his kingdom, of his children that to be with him, or that are with him. Let's have a look at the example of when Israel was in Mitzrayim, in Egypt, as slaves. Abba came to free his people, and he did this by hardening the heart of Pharaoh, who would then not let Israel go. By doing this, he used Pharaoh so that Abba has a reason to show his power and his might through all these miracles that he's done with the plagues. So let's look at another example. I'm going to read from Genesis 20 verse 4, and this is where Abram was feared for his life because of the beauty of his wife. So from verse 4, however, Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, Yahuah, would you slay a righteous nation also? Did he not say to me, she is my sister? And even she herself said, he is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and in the innocence of my hands, I have done this. And Elohim said to him in a dream, yeah, I know that you did this in the integrity of your heart. And so I kept you from sinning against me. For this reason, I did not let you touch her. Can you see? Abba worked through Abimelech to protect Abram's wife and Abram. I would like to use my life and that of my wife, just a small part to show you how Abba worked in our lives. He worked in our lives physically, He worked in our lives spiritually, and we have learned that He is our teacher. Yahusha is our teacher, and we need to follow Him through obedience to His word. The important thing to understand is that when Abba calls His people or His children, He reveals Himself to them in a certain way. It can be, for Joe it can be one way, and for Pete it can be another way, and for Susan in a different way. But He will take the first step. And this is important because it is that the chosen need to recognize the higher power. They have to recognize there's something happening in my life. When Abba calls His children, He calls them for a reason, to set them apart for Him, because they are His children. We read from Leviticus 20 verse 26. And you shall be set apart to me, for I, Yahuah, am set apart, and have separated you from the peoples to be mine. Abba protects that what is His, and that what He loves. But what is really important to understand, this relationship that Abba wants with you is a conditional relationship. It is not a one-way street. It is not an unconditional relationship. Although Abba's love is unconditional because He loves everybody. But to have relationship with Him and to be saved, it is conditional. And let's have a look at what Abba says in Exodus 23 verse 22. But if you diligently obey His voice, this is Yahusha speaking, he says, but if you diligently obey His voice and shall do all that I speak, then I shall be an enemy to your enemies and a distresser to those who distress you. Can you see that there is a condition? If you obey Abba's voice and if you do all that I speak, then. If you accept the conditions, Yahuah will protect you and He will bless you. He will look after you. And we read that in Deuteronomy 5 verse 29. He says, oh, that they had such a heart in them. I can hear and I can feel Abba's love in this. Is that in that, oh, that they had such a heart in them. That's what Abba wants us to have. He says, to fear me and to guard all my commands, always. Not once, twice, or sometimes. Oh, that they had such a heart in them to fear me and to guard all my commands, always. That is the condition. The reward or the promise is that it might be well with them and with their children forever. The condition and the reward. He will teach us and show us the way when we choose to follow Him. And Yahusha is our teacher. Because Abba says to us in Isaiah 30 verse 20 and 21, He says, though Yahuah gave you bread of adversity, He's testing you, and He will refine you this way, and water of affliction, your teacher shall no longer be hidden, but your eyes shall see your teacher, and your ears hear a word behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it, whenever you turn to the right or whenever you turn to the left. That is so wonderful to know that we don't need to rely on man to have an understanding of Abba's word, because Yahusha will teach us. Now I'm just going to read a little section to you about how Abba worked in our lives. It's because I know this little story, because it was us. When we turned our lives away from the world and committed ourselves to Abba, things started happening. My wife and I are so blessed to have walked this way together from the beginning. We became born again in a very similar time period and had incredible experience, and it happened very vividly to me. Many people are called, and not often both husband and wife together, and that can be really hard, and that's why I say we were so blessed. Now, when I became born again, it was a vivid experience. It was a very real experience. But for my wife, it was very different. But she was blessed in another amazing way. She very quickly started operating in the gifts of the Spirit. I used to say she had a direct line with Abba. She got answers. She asked and she had an answer. And sometimes she would think something and she would have an answer. It was so wonderful, so amazing. But for me, I was like the slower kid in the class. I had to really work at it, and it's still the case. I study Abba's word, and I get wonderful gems that Abba revealed to me through persistence in studying of his word, where my wife seems to get these things so easily. But it's wonderful because it makes us such a good team together. So we've learned that Abba uses his children differently. And that's where my wife and I are such good examples in this. But really important to understand that although it's different, not one is any less than the other or anyone more than another. We have got different gifts to serve Abba better for his pleasure and for the esteem of his kingdom. And that is really important. That it's never about what I received or what my wife received, but it was wonderful to see her excel in her faith that way, and I had it so differently. Yahuah says in Yohanan 15 verse 10 and 11, if you guard my commands, you shall stay in my love, even as I have guarded my Father's commands and stay in his love. And if you listen to the next verse, and this is so beautiful because this is what we must experience. It says, these words I've spoken to you, so that my joy might be in you and your joy might be complete. When we serve Abba with all of our heart and all of our being, that joy is so amazing. The joy is not riches of the world. The joy is in riches of knowledge, knowing Abba, knowing Yahusha, knowing his word. I like to use an example. We sometimes go on YouTube and then you get these videos where babies laughing. That is so wonderful to see. And it's a bit like that. The joy that we get from Yahusha is just something that's just there. These babies, when they laugh, these parents, they will tear paper or make a noise, and these little ones, they laugh. And it's so contagious, that laugh, because you can't help to laugh with them. You don't know why you're laughing. But that's how it is. It's just something that you receive from Abba. And that is so wonderful. For us at this point in our life, there was just no turnaround in our faith. And we excelled with Abba and in his word. We got to know his word, and we learned with like a sponge soaking up the water. But then, we were at this point still in the church. Things started to feel wrong, and we noticed errors in the church. And Abba made it very clear for us to understand that we are dying Our roots are dying in the church. And at that point we felt that it was happening in that specific church, this church. So we moved to another church, and there we experienced the errors and saw things that were wrong. And then we went to the next one. I think we went to 4 churches, and they all had something wrong. It was not a total commitment to Abba. It was the church that was important. It was the people in the church that was important. It was how Abba can bless them, rather than the other way around, how I can bless Abba. How can I serve Him? And then we reached a point in our lives, and that Abba gave me a verse at this point, and it was a verse, Isaiah 42, verse 22. He says, "But this is a people robbed and plundered. All of them are snared in holes, and they are hidden in prison houses. They have become a prey with no one to deliver, for plunder and no one to say, restore." I really felt that I had to make a difference. I had to do something, and I thought that Abba was taking me to prison ministry. And that is where it sometimes happens, if especially early in your walk and you don't quite understand how Abba operates, you can get a misunderstanding. So we prayed and prayed and we prayed, believe me. And then Abba gave me another word. And this is from Mark 7, from verse 6. And Abba saying, "And he answering said to them, Well, did Yeshayahu, or Isaiah, prophesy concerning you hypocrites, as it has been written, These people respect me with their lips, but their heart is far from me." And that is what is happening in the church. "And in vain do they worship me, teaching as teachings the commands of men. Forsaking the command of Elohim, you hold fast to the tradition of men." And he said to them, "Well, do you set aside the command of Elohim in order to guard your own tradition?" Things started to make sense at that point, because of the human and the man's traditions that we were following in the church, instead of focusing on Abba's word. I had to make myself part of Him, and Him part of me. I had to exclude what was not of Abba. When Abba gave me verses, and still do, I write them down, and then I memorize them. I've got so many now that I can't memorize all of them, but it helped me to have a real good understanding of what Abba was telling me, because those were words that He gave specifically to me. And then Abba started working on us, and He prompted questions. He put questions in our minds. And we yearned so much to serve Him in truth. For instance, we couldn't understand how come if there's one Abba and one Messiah, why are there so many different denominations in the church? There's more than 33,000 Christian denominations in the world. But they all pray to one Father and one Messiah. That spells so clearly man's way, man's will, his own tradition. There should be one flock, one shepherd, according to Abba in His word. My wife and I asked and prayed to Abba to show us the truth. We didn't want to serve a false God, and certainly not follow after the traditions of man. We went to several churches, as I've mentioned, and that was hard work, because we wanted to serve Abba. Abba showed us errors in the Bibles. Verses left out, words left out, words added. And that changed the meaning of the message. If you want to know more of that, I've done a chat on translation errors. Please have a look at that. And then we discovered that Christmas was a lie too, that our Messiah wasn't born then. Our whole world came tumbling down. Everything we believed all of our lives was a lie. We felt so lost. We experienced panic. Because Abba brought us into such an amazing place with Him. And then we learned these things are wrong. But the important and good thing was, we started a relationship with Abba. We had a relationship with Him. And we then, because we've seen Him work in us, knew that He was true. We just knew that the errors were what we were not to follow. So we were in a place where we could build. Something that comes to my mind now is that when people go to the army, they first break them down and then they build them up. That's what Abba did with us. We had to get away and take all that paganism away from us, so they can start with us anew. Then my wife was shown, when she went to pick up the kids from school, they stand outside the gates and she talks to people and she will share where the opportunity arises. And then one of the mothers there showed my wife the scriptures. And my wife brought that home and showed me, and I was upset. I said, take it away. We can't use that. It doesn't say Bible on it. And that's how it was. And then I was working and I was driving, and then Abba revealed to me and said, that is the truth. I straight away phoned my wife and said she must order and get us the scriptures. And it was so amazing to start reading Abba's word, reading and saying His name. That started unlocking amazing things for us. And we're starting to get to know Abba better. And this is where we reach the point that this verse that Abba gave us, well, He gave me then actually, was 1 Peter 1 verse 23. And it says, having been born not of corruptible seed, but incorruptible, through the living word of Elohim, which remains forever. Now I'm going to read a verse here from 2 Corinthians. And Abba says, 2 Corinthians 6 verse 14, he says, do not become unevenly yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership have righteousness and lawlessness? And what fellowship has light with darkness? We can't have fellowship with people that follow paganism. And we can't walk with people that walk in darkness. Now I'm going to use these two cups. My wife painted one white and one black. So this is light and this is darkness. Because this verse sometimes not quite make sense the first time when people read it. So I'm going to read it and I'm going to bring these to help you understand. And I'm going to read this verse again. 1 Peter 1 verse 23. Having been born again, not of corruptible seed, but of incorruptible seed, through the living word which remains forever. This is a scary thought. When my wife and I became born again, we were born again of corruptible seed in the name of God, Lord, and Jes. Because it's not their name. The sacred names, we had to be born again. So we had to become born again in the light, in the name of Yahusha, in the name of Yahuah, our Savior. Be born again of incorruptible seed. And the following verse will make more sense now. I'm going to read verse 22 before I get to 23. He says, now that you have cleansed your lives in obeying the truth. There is that condition again. We must be cleansed through obedience. Through the Spirit to unfeigned brotherly love. Love one another fervently with a clean heart. And then it continues. Having been born again, not of corruptible seed, but of incorruptible seed. And that is the really important matter that we have to have here. I'm nearly there. I'm going a little bit over time. I think I'm rather going to stop here. And then I will continue with the next session. Shalom. Thank you for listening. And we will continue with the next session.